You're listening to the Jewish Entrepreneur Podcast with Debbie Sasson, episode 107. Welcome to the Jewish Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Sasson. I went from being a financial advisor, author, and chronic under-earner to building my business to six figures as a financial planner and money mindset coach, and then onto multiple six figures as a full-time money and business coach. I help entrepreneurs create money-making businesses and build wealth using sales and money mindset strategies and in alignment with authentic Jewish values. Now, let's dive in to today's show. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the podcast. As you're listening to this podcast, it is the holiday of Hanukkah. During Hanukkah, we celebrate the victory of the Jews over the Hellenists, over the Greeks, back 2,000 plus years ago. And it is a beautiful holiday. We celebrate the miracle that happened when there was just a little bit of oil that we needed every morning to light the menorah in the Holy Temple. And the miracle was that this little bit of oil lasted for 8 days. And there's also the military victory of the small Jewish army against the mighty Greek army. And as we are still in a war against our evil enemies, Hamas, and we continue to pray for a miracle, and we are definitely making very bold steps and progress in this war. It is such a fitting time to really remember how God showers us with his blessings, and miracles really do happen. Against that background, I wanted to share with you my first podcast episode. Now we have to wind the clock back 2 years. My first podcast dropped on December 1st, and you're going to be listening to it in a moment. It's called Reinventing Money. It is so appropriate for this time for, I think, 3 reasons. Number one, during the holiday of Hanukkah, there is a custom to give our children money, Hanukkah geld, because the word Hanukkah comes from the word chinuch, which means education. And one of the things we do is we educate our children in the commandment, in the mitzvah of giving charity. We give 10% of our income, minimum 10%, away to charitable causes. And certainly at this time, there has been such a need in the Jewish community from so many different places, whether it's families that have been displaced and they've had to move from the south to the center of the country, or from the north to the center of the country, or whether it's boots for our soldiers, food for families, mothers of families whose husbands are serving in the reserves. There has been such a call out for financial resources, food, clothing, everything. And we have really rallied together as a community. We've pulled our charities together in support of our people, our country, and it's such a beautiful thing that ties in with the holiday of Hanukkah. The second thing is just this time of year. Actually, as this podcast is dropping, we are now on the first day of the new month of Tevet, and it's also a time of renewal, which goes together with the theme of reinventing money. And this third thing, 2 and 3 are connected. We are coming out of the darkest time of the year, when the days are the shortest that they will ever be. And we're now moving into the time of light, which happens right after the holiday of Hanukkah. So again, as we have been in this dark period with this war against Hamas, we are now moving into the lighter period. Again, we are moving into our victory, our military victory, our spiritual victory. And I also want to just be really honest. I think 2023, from a financial point of view, if we look at the global economy, there has been a contraction, a slowdown in economic activity in 2023. It started towards the end of 2022. And I'm hopeful that we're moving into a period of light, a period of economic expansion. I know that many of my clients have had successful years financially, and other people in other industries or other professions may have had a slower economic year. First of all, ups and downs in business are always part of business. No business continues to grow in a straight line. There are economic cycles, business cycles. We certainly know about that with tourism. There's like the summer holidays when people like to tour around. And then there's definitely holiday seasons when people are more focused on consumer products. But wherever your business is, whatever your industry, your profession, business cycles are normal. And I am really hopeful that we're entering into a period of an expanding business cycle in 2024. Now, the last thing that I want to just give you a little hint about what's coming up in the podcast is a theme that I really talked about called What Would Happen If I Could? And I think that that's something that we have to open and expand our minds. Like, if you really think about investing in your business in a new way, like, what would happen if you could actually do those brave, risky things that you want to do? You could show up more visibly. You could master your sales conversations. You could learn how to write copy that connects with your clients. You could just offer the services that your heart is telling you to offer to the world in a big, bold, expansive way. So a little announcement I'll remind you at the end of the podcast. Wired for Wealth, my group coaching program for Jewish women, is opening. I have a very small enrollment window between January 2nd and January 4th. I will be taking just 4 new clients into the program. I give a one-on-one onboarding call to make sure that everybody enters the program and feels, belongs, like just knows what she's doing when she enters the program. So I really do a slow onboarding. There are only 4 spots available in January, and I won't be opening again until March. If this interests you, make sure that you are on my newsletter, debbiesasson.com/newsletter, because I will tell you when enrollment opens, and I will also let you know about the open house that I'm offering on January 2nd, where you can get all of your questions about the program answered. So again, go to my website, debbiesasson.com/newsletter, and make sure that you are the first to know when enrollment opens, when I'm starting to offer sales conversations specifically for Wired for Wealth. All right, my friends, let's zoom into the podcast because there is so much to learn about reinventing money. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Sasson, and I'm so happy that you're joining me here today. This podcast has been a long time in the making. In fact, this is the 3rd time I'm recording this podcast, and I'm super excited to get it off the ground. It's Wednesday evening in my home office. My home office was once the bedroom shared by my 3 oldest children, all girls, and in addition to my girls, I'm also the mom of 5 boys and many grandchildren. My goal for this episode is to tell you what the Mastering Money in Midlife podcast is and isn't, and a little bit about how I got here, and also an inspirational story of a midlife woman who had a major business failure in her 40s, created a new company in her 50s, and 10 years later, her company is valued at over $2 billion. I hope it will be an inspiration for you and a taste of what's to come. But before we get into that, I want to share with you something about money that you can use right now. And that is asking yourself, what could happen if I could? And it's on my mind today because yesterday when I was working out with my trainer, I was doing step-ups on a CrossFit box. And if you don't know what a CrossFit box is, I didn't know what one was either until a year ago. It's a rectangular wooden box. Each of the 3 dimensions is different, which means that you can lay it on the floor 3 different ways, and the box will have 3 different heights. There's the lowest height, the medium height, and the highest height. And for the last year or so, I've been doing my step-ups on the medium height. But yesterday morning, I looked at my trainer and I said, "You do this on the highest height, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah." And I was a little cheeky and a little curious. And I said to her, "Can I try?" She said, "Sure." So after my first set, I got down. She tipped over the box to the highest height. And I kind of looked at it with my eyes bulging out and looked a little bit scary. But I'm like, you know what? What could happen if I could? Let's try. So I stepped up once. I stepped up a second time. I stepped up a third time. And before I knew it, I did 10 on the right leg, 10 on the left leg, 3 times. And you know what? The highest height is my new normal. And I think that's a great metaphor for money. Asking yourself, what could happen if I could? Because you can also have a new normal, right? Like, what if I could raise my prices? What if I could change the terms of payment and all my clients would pay me upfront so I wouldn't have to chase after money? Or what could happen if I could invest more money? Or maybe what could happen if I could earn more money and donate more money and make a bigger impact in the world? Because maybe there are things you're not thinking about, or you're not doing with your money, or you're thinking today it's not a possibility. I can't do that. It's not my job. We don't do those kind of things. People will laugh at me or think I'm nuts if I try to do that with my money. Or maybe your partner's used to handling certain things with money in your life, or your accountant or your investment manager. They've been the ones who've been taking care of money and making the decisions. Kind of like my trainer was making the decision for me about doing step-ups on the medium height. But maybe if you would ask yourself, what could happen if I could, you too could have a new normal. Because when we're just letting things continue the way they've always been happening and not thinking that there's any other possibility, and we don't ask the questions, we kind of keep ourselves stuck exactly where we are, right? And if you're thinking, I don't know how, that's going to keep you status quo. But that thought is really optional. It's just a sentence in your mind. And what could happen if I could is just as optional. So if there's something to do with your money that makes you scared a little bit, anxious, makes your eyes bulge out, or you feel some clenching in your stomach, ask yourself, what could happen if I could? And that's how I got to recording this podcast, which I'm recording for the 3rd time. Because nearly a year ago, I asked myself, what could happen if I could do a podcast? And I have to say, I was a little bit scared and I put it off for many, many months. But here I am today doing the thing that I put in my mind and thought, what could happen if I could? And I want you to come here and feel possibility, feel inspired, feel uplifted, maybe even challenged or fascinated by how you can think about money and do money in new ways. And also to believe that everything you've done with money until now is perfect, divinely guided. It's exactly the way it should be. The way you earned money and spent money, saved money, didn't save money, the way you've invested or shared or donated money in the world. And there's more growth and discovery and potential and mastery for you and for your money. So let's dig into that word mastery. Mastery is the result of a process. We all start out as beginners, right? None of us come into this world knowing anything about money, but we learn about it over time and we achieve a little bit of knowledge, understanding, competence with money. And I like to really compare it with learning to play an instrument. I learned to play the violin in 4th grade. It was a very short-lived career. My daughter learned to play the violin when she was in 9th grade and kept it up for many years. But playing the violin is very squeaky and hurts your ears in the beginning. There are a lot of mistakes, lots of dissonance. But if you keep with it, then after a while, it can become more pleasant and enjoyable. And if you decide to make a career out of music, then you can actually achieve mastery playing the violin. So those of us who are not musicians, that's not what we're choosing to do with our lives, but we're actually have businesses, making money and earning money. Money is something that we're involved with all the time. And even if you don't have your own business, money is something that you're involved with all the time. We receive money, pay money, save money. It's just part of our life. So in the beginning, when you were little, Maybe you got an allowance or birthday money from your parents or your grandparents, and you were a beginner. You could have saved some, or maybe you donated, or maybe you bought some trinkets at the local shop or candy like most kids do. And then when you got older, you understood more about money, and maybe you did some babysitting, or you mowed a lawn, or you walked some dogs, or you worked in an ice cream store. And then you got to be even more proficient with money because you were now figuring out how to earn money. And then you might have actually gotten a job in your 20s or 30s, and there might have been a retirement plan that was connected with that. And then there was more types of money in your life than when you were that little kid just with the allowance. And over time, we learn about money in new and different ways, and we become more competent. And over time, we can even achieve mastery with our money. And I'm not here to tell you which part of your money or your financial picture needs mastery, because it's your money and you get to decide and do with it what you will. But there are helpful tools and skills and mindset shifts that I've learned working on Wall Street and then later as a financial planner. And I made my big investing mistake that I'm going to tell you about soon. And I worked with a financial coach, and later I became certified as a money coach. And now, after coaching so many clients and growing my own business to multiple six figures, I have a lot to share with you. And that's what I want this podcast to be about. I don't want it to be about financial advice, because each one of us has our own individual situation with money and when we need money and our ability to take risk when we're investing our money. So if that's what you need, please find a financial planner or an investment advisor whom you trust and take those specific situations to your financial people. But still, I want this podcast to be practical, so it will add real value to your money and your life. So, how did I get here? You might be wondering, right? I kind of discovered the world of money when I was 20. Because growing up in Los Angeles, the land of sun and fun and the occasional movie star, I didn't really know too much about money and Wall Street. But my boyfriend in college told me that I should be an investment banker. And I didn't really know what an investment banker was. But I'm a good listener, so when all of the investment banks came recruiting on our college campus, I applied and landed myself a job on the trading floor at Goldman Sachs on Wall Street. So I like to say that I grew up on Wall Street because that's where I really moved from being a beginner or novice around money to that next level of competency. And I worked on the fixed income trading floor for 3 years. And fixed income is fancy financial jargon for debt. And in a future episode, I'll share my thoughts about debt with you. And then when I moved to Israel over 30 years ago, I worked for the central bank, the Bank of Israel, co-managing the country's portfolio of foreign currency reserves. And then my second growth spurt around money happened 19 years ago. My husband was diagnosed with cancer. Thank God he's fine today, 100%. Remission, it's not even something that we think about. But at that time, it was very, very stressful for our family. I was the mom of 6 kids. My youngest was nursing. I would go to work every day and also visit my husband in the hospital when he was there having his treatments. And then after a few months, he completed his treatments. Everything was good. And 2-3 months later, my mother-in-law, my husband's mother, passed away unexpectedly, within a week. And those were 2 big moments of awakening for us. And especially as the parents of young children, we realized that our financial house was not in order. Like, what would happen if? And we realized we better do something in case of emergency. And there were things that we did that were good. Like, we had savings accounts for all of our children because that was something that we knew we were supposed to do. We were being responsible about that. But there were other things that we weren't paying attention to. So as the financial person in the family, I was the one with more background, I started looking into our financial stuff. And I discovered 3 things. The first thing was my retirement plan that I had with Goldman Sachs had been languishing in a low interest earning account for nearly 20 years. And it was a real shame because that money could have been invested in the stock market where it would have compounded and multiplied in value over and over and over again. So we really lost a lot of money by not investing properly. The second thing we uncovered was money that we had invested with an investment manager was being churned. And that means that the investment manager was buying and selling and buying and selling. He was doing a lot of trading in the account. And every time he did a trade, it cost us commissions. So our money was basically being sucked away to pay the investment manager. And it also wasn't growing as well as it could have or should have if we had been smarter about our money. So I started learning a lot more about investing. I bought some books and I read some blogs, and blogging 20 years ago wasn't what blogging is today. So I did the best I could. And as I learned more about investing, I also made a big money mistake. I took a hot tip from someone and it's something I never should have done because I didn't know enough about what I was doing. I didn't know enough about the ramifications of this investment. But anyway, I invested with someone, and within a few short months, I lost $50,000. And that was really painful. And I had a lot of shame about that. And it took me some time to get over that. But what it did do was ignite my interest in learning even more about investing and how personal investing is very different from the investing that I had been used to from the companies and the governments where I had been working. And then I also worked with a money coach because I wanted to understand my money story. I went into my family of origin story around money. I uncovered the hidden drivers of what was really motivating my behavior. And there was a lot of scarcity and greed around money. So I unraveled that and cleared that. And I really changed the way we did money for our family and ultimately took back the management of our investing from the people who were investing it. And so in the last 11 years, 12 years, I've been managing all of the money for our family. And this was such a helpful and eye-opening experience for me that after the birth of our 8th child, when I was pretty burnt out from my job already, I decided to pivot into personal financial planning because I knew that if I'd made some big mistakes with my money, and that was even with my financial background, and I didn't have the blocks to the financial jargon and lingo that a lot of people do, and I didn't have a problem taking risk because I took a lot of risk and lost a lot of money. But if I could make that mistake as someone who had a financial background, then certainly people who didn't have the kind of financial backgrounds could be making mistakes. And I knew that I could be helpful that way. And as a financial planner, I started meeting with different kinds of people and hearing more stories and seeing new money blocks. And it didn't matter if someone had $100,000 or $500,000 in savings and investments, or they received millions of dollars in an inheritance, or they had tens and twenties of thousands of dollars in debt. Everybody has money blocks. So I decided that it would be really helpful for me in my career to get a certification as a money coach. And then fast forward to today and a lot of hard work later, and I've built a successful coaching practice helping people make more money in their businesses and keep more money and share more money and build wealth for themselves and their family for the long term. And my business now feels like the natural evolution of the life of an entrepreneur because I started as a little girl with a successful lemonade stand. And after many years and many iterations, I'm now a successful entrepreneur with a business helping people create and share more wealth. And it's meaningful, important work. So that story I promised to tell you at the beginning of this episode is about a woman by the name Julie Wainwright. She's the CEO of The RealReal. It's the largest online consignment store for luxury resale. And I first heard about The RealReal from my sister several years ago, and I've done some window shopping on The RealReal's website. But recently, I saw an article in Forbes online about Julie Wainwright. Here's her story. In 1999, Julie Wainwright became the CEO of Pets.com. But by late 2000, Pets.com went bankrupt. And that was a huge public failure for Julie Wainwright. And in the same week, her husband filed for divorce. So she had these two major life crises happening at the same time. And it set her back, understandably, for some time. But about 6 months later, Julie decided to go out and look for a job. She was living in the Silicon Valley, and she approached a recruiter in the Valley, and he said to her that her failure was so huge that he wasn't going to introduce her to any company. And I can imagine that that was a big blow for Julie Wainwright. But instead of letting that stop her, Julie Wainwright asked herself, what could happen if I could? And she decided that she was going to create her own dream job. And she was going to start her own dream company. Because even though people around her didn't believe in her, she believed in herself. And she decided to combine her passion for business and beauty and fashion together with her awareness of landfill and how much fashion is ending up in landfill. And she opened up the Real, an online consignment store for luxury goods. And in the article on Forbes, Julie Wainwright shares with us 5 tips. The first one is to think about your business as a long-term investment, right? You're here to play the long game. So number 2 was to take risks and never stop taking risks. And after 20 years after her big failure, Julie Wainwright took her company, the Real, public on the NASDAQ stock exchange. And she's one of only 25 women who have ever taken their companies public. And today her company is valued at over $2 billion. And the third piece of advice she gives us is that you will have setbacks, right? Businesses don't grow in a straight line. There are going to be ups and there are going to be downs, but never give up. And the last piece of advice she gives us is to take care of your body and your spirit, because those are the things you're going to need most to support you in your journey as a businesswoman. So in the spirit of Julie Wainwright, who reinvented herself and reinvented money at the age of 53, I encourage you to do the same. Learn more about money. Take risks. Stretch yourself beyond what you think you're capable of doing today. Ask yourself, what could happen if I could? And play the long game. All right, my friends, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me for this first episode of Mastering Money in Midlife. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today. I really hope you enjoyed my podcast. It's sometimes a little bit like, eeks! When I listen to the first podcast, I didn't speak clearly. That first episode, I actually read from a script, and I had to read it several times before it really rolled off my tongue smoothly. And that is like anything you do. The more you do it, the more you practice, the more it becomes familiar. It's kind of like riding a bicycle, driving a car, anything you're going to do new for the first time, the second time, the 27th time, it's going to feel a little bit awkward. And now I just talk into my microphone and it just feels like as natural as telling you my name is Debbie Sasson. It is just what I do. And really, what would happen if you could invest in your business and just make everything new and smooth and bigger and more visible and serve more clients? Just think where you could be in 2 years from now. Like, the mind boggles when I think about all of the new things I've put in place in my business in the last 2 years. It is really crazy to think where I've come from and where I am today. And I want to offer you that opportunity as well. My group coaching program, Wired for Wealth, is a lifetime access program, meaning you get to stay there for life and you get to get coaching from me for life. Now, I commit to you when you join for 2 years, which is exactly the time period from when my first podcast episode was recorded. And God willing, I will be healthy and I will be there for 3 and 10 years from now. But I commit to 2 years, again, with God's help and good health. If you are interested in Wired for Wealth, make sure you are on my newsletter, debbiesasson.com/newsletter, so you are the first to know when enrollment opens. There are only 4 spots available when you can sign up for a sales conversation or come to the open house on January 2nd and get all of your questions answered. All right, my friends, I will see you next week. I'm wishing you a happy Hanukkah and a Chodesh Tov. It should be a good month and a good holiday, and we should be witness to many, many miracles. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Jewish Entrepreneur Podcast. If you want to stop underselling and under-earning and close more sales, you need to clear the limiting money beliefs that are sabotaging your business growth. Head on over to debbiesasson.com/mindset and download my free Money Mindset Workbook. Uncover and dissolve money blocks like hundreds of other entrepreneurs who are now building 6, multi-6, and 7-figure businesses and creating true financial freedom.